Hello and welcome to the next instalment of Fathom in Person. Thank you all for joining us this week. We're in Friends of Ours Coffee House, a slightly different setting this week, and I'm joined by Andrew Harris, fellow Euro area economist, and we're here to talk about a note that we recently put out entitled "Is the German Economy Overheating?" So, Andrew, Germany seems to be doing pretty well recently, and it had a great year last year in 2017, along with the rest of the Euro area. Is that a view you share?
Yes, indeed it is. If you had a checklist of what a policymaker wanted to see in their economy, I think Germany would have ticked off almost everything on that list last year. So we had low and falling unemployment, we had a current account surplus, so that means that more money was coming into the country than going out. We had growth well above the Euro area average, and we had yet another budget surplus.
Yeah, it's impressive. So, at Fathom, we have a macro policy indicator called the FMPI. Some of our readers may be aware of that, and it tracks the relative looseness or tightness of policy around the euro area. Now, for some countries, this will be good, because at the moment it's very loose, and it's very loose for Germany. Do you see that as a good thing for Germany, or could it potentially cause the economy to overheat in some way?
Well, I think you have to remember that Germany is at a way more advanced stage of the economic cycle than the rest of the euro area is.
Sure.
So obviously there might be causes that this could be overstimulative for the economy. But how do you see, for example, the inputs to that policy indicator going forward? Do you see ECB policy remaining loose?
So, exactly, excellent point. So, the ECB have said that they're going to end their asset purchase programme by September of this year. And our view as a company really is that it's not going to have a material impact on the German economy really. It may cause some of the peripheral spreads, some of the smaller nations in the euro area to rise, and we might see some of those blow out because the ECB is going to cease to buy their bonds. But as for material impacts on the economies, no, we see the impact as fairly limited.
And of course, things like an appreciating currency, they've already begun, and it hasn't seemed to have derailed the German economy so far, has it?
Exactly. And another topic that we think is very important across the euro area is that of inflation. Now, core inflation across the euro area has been flat at around about 1% since, give or take, 2014. That is a puzzle to us, and while we might see some upward pressure to inflation going forward, core inflation we think will still be subdued. So we see the movement more in headline inflation. Is that a view you share?
Yes, indeed. I think the traditional way of modelling inflation is to use like a Phillips curve framework.
Yes.
Now in the short term, a Phillips curve would predict that inflation depends on inflation expectations and the output gap, which is a measure of how output is relative to its potential, so what an economy can produce on a sustainable basis. So we've estimated this kind of relationship for Germany. We find that it still exists, as it does in many other countries.
Yes. So
all in all, given our view on the output gap, which we think is extremely positive, we see definite upward pressure on German inflation.
Excellent. So looking forward then, in terms of forecast this year and next year, we're fairly positive on the outlook for growth, but less so on inflation. Have you got some actual numbers that we can look at for that?
Yeah, so this year we see growth slowing slightly to 2.4% in Germany.
Yes.
And then a little bit more slower, 1.7% next year.
So tailing off slightly
But still fairly solid.
Yes.
On inflation, we see a large pickup this year to 2.1%, and then we see 2.3% the following year. Obviously, that should put pressure on the ECB to tighten policy. What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, ECB policy is an interesting one because they've explicitly said that they're not going to raise rates until the conclusion of their asset purchase programme, which we know will be in September this year. So our view is that we may see one, but more likely two interest rate rises next year, potentially in Q1 and Q3 of 2019. But they're going to have to be very sure that they've seen a meaningful pickup in inflation before they decide to do that. So yeah.
Which is consistent with our forecast.
Exactly. That's great. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.